we're able to go back and rewire with these messages anything that we didn't get growing up. And most of us, if we don't get these messages, especially the early ones, 0 to 7, and that sense of attunement, we spend our whole life looking out there for the right relationship, or from these messages from people that we don't necessarily really need them from our boss, even from our kids, looking for them to fill our void in some way. But nobody else outside of ourselves, not even the right love relationship, can ever really fill and fix what we didn't get back then.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Joss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. And today we have part 2 of the interview with Noah Rothschild, who is a somatic therapist. IBP, Integrative Body Psychotherapy, is the modality he works with, but so many other talents and so many wonderful parts to the second part about the conversation. We talk about inner child work. We talk about agency, which this is some serious good stuff to understand how we can be a self agent where you take care of yourself and you act on your own behalf, or we can be really high agents where we want to take care of other people and fix other people and kind of control stuff outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel better, but we're really giving away our autonomy, and it doesn't end well. And by doing that, we teach other people how to behave, and it's really empowering to see my part in the system. And the conversation with Noah is great. If you're new to the community, welcome. Come out and play. We have some great guests on. We have some great guests coming up. We're really going to dig into chronic pain, the relationship between emotional pain and that stuff that turns into physical pain and what that looks like. We touch on it a tiny bit here, but that's coming up in upcoming shows. And we have some wonderful guests coming up, and some great panels of parents and grandparents and step parents. Really, really cool stuff. So check out the show notes. There's links to the 12-step group that we run, which is free. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. All our offerings are free, and if you're in the financial position to donate to what we're doing, we'd love that. And all that information is in the show notes. Our email is in the show notes, familydisappeared@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We're looking for guests. We're looking for good conversations. We're looking to build community, and let's do it. Let's get in there. One of the most profound moments that I had when I was working with Noah is we were doing breath work, and we're working on what was going on with me, and this idea of my relationships with different family members, and how my inner framework was built up. And I was talking to Noah about my relationship with some family members, and he brought up the idea of emotional incest. So get this, I'm working with Noah, I'm lying on the table doing breath work, and he's like, wow, that's emotional incest. And we're talking about my mom, and I'm like, whoa, bro, no, like, what? Like, that's not okay to say that to me. And as we started to work with this, like, the idea of emotional incest was me being in my mom's belly and being a really young age, and my mom needing my energy to moderate her nervous system. And we talk about this a lot, is how our kids, grandkids, are moderating one parent or both parent at different times nervous systems, and we're actually taking from the child. And a lot of this dysfunction we see in parental alienation and estrangement, where a particular parent is really needy emotionally from a child. And that's the relationship that I have with my mother. I was regulating her nervous system, and he said emotional incest, and I got really offended. And it's a visceral word if someone says that to you, and you can feel it in your body, and there's so much like, no, there's no way. And yeah, it's all over the place, emotional incest, where people are in our space, or we're going inadvertently into other people's spaces, and we're trying to regulate them, and especially when kids are young and stuff like that, and we're just trying to parent the best way we can. Like, that comes up a lot, and it's an interesting thing to explore, and life changing and life affirming, even though it's a hard word to hear, because I really get to understand how I'm built out and some of my behaviors, and I don't know if that made any sense, but maybe it got your attention. Anyway, we're going to jump into the conversation with Noah. I can't wait for you to hear what we're talking about today. So let's go. And can we talk about like these blocks that we have in our body where we can't get our energy flowing from the tips of our toes to the top of our head? What's happening there, Noah?
That's a great question. And so all of us, when we experience that lack of presence growing up, we learn to hold in certain parts of our body. Um, Holding just means when that love wasn't available, the first way that we could not experience sadness, or we had to stop ourselves from crying because nobody was going to pick us up because we were raised, many of us, with, if you pick up children who are crying too much, that you're actually going to spoil them, and that you actually will create some type of narcissist or something like that, instead of realizing that we do need to pick kids up when they're crying. And all research has shown that attachment parenting and valuing attachment is so important. But for many, many years, again, many of our parents were taught not to attune, because too much attunement would cause some type of bad, needy, weak child, which was absolutely wrong and created so much damage in our society by cutting so many of us off from our feeling and our attunement and our emotional presence. And so when we don't receive that, what we learn to do to survive is shut down parts of our body so we don't have to feel the pain. Now, it serves the benefit of numbing ourselves so we may not feel the pain, but we also, the pain is still there in our body underneath where we are holding. And so it has some consequences because we spend a lot of our life not feeling in the lower part of our body, or for some people in their chest. And so when we hold like this, we're actually blocking a lot of our aliveness and a lot of our ability to be present. But it's what we had to do to survive, to block out that pain that was so painful when we were a child. So hopefully that answers a bunch of your question there.
It does, and I'm also hoping this gives folks out there that are struggling a sense of relief because we're watching our children, we're watching ourselves, we're watching other people in our lives that are totally disembodied. They're talking about stuff that's not mirrored healthily. It doesn't make any kind of sense. The thing that I love about IBP is it's actually opening up the engine and I'm getting to see all the parts so I could finally understand what was happening for myself and for my kids. Like when I'm trying to connect and I'm just getting this verbiage out of their mouth that doesn't make any sense, they're completely cut off and part of their body's completely shut down because they've had to armor up so they can't feel anything. So I got to learn from that part that it wasn't personal. It's not about me. And in the beginning, I wanted to make it that my kids were wrong or something. But I've really come to learn that they are me and I am them. And we're just all trying to survive. I've taught them different techniques. They've learned other techniques in the family system, transgenerationally, whatever, and their bodies are shut down. They can't feel. And it's not
Yes,
that they hate me. They just can't feel, right?
right. So for so many of us, when we experience that lack of a presence or an attunement in our own childhood, and we bring that with us to our adult life, and a part of us is shut down, we will eventually see that reflected back in our kids, whether they learn that from the other parent or other people, but or they learn that directly from seeing us do that, and we were unconscious of it, and we modeled that for them, or it was passed on generationally. What we kind of feel is they are reenacting our own wounding from our childhood. So oftentimes, a lot of times, what I like to call that holding pattern in our body is, I also like to call it our child self, the voice of our child self, where we feel that tightness or constriction, or we feel that void or that emptiness. And we can feel that in a certain place in our body where we've been tight or empty, or sad or anxious. That's the voice of our child self. And then as time goes on, our kids enact something, which is kind of magical how that happens, how people who are close to us pick up on us subconsciously or through our modeling, and they start to reenact the same rejection and abandonment that we experienced with mom or dad. And it feels like it's happening to us, and that maybe they're rejecting us or hurting us, or they don't want us or want to be with us. But that's just bringing up our inner child and that holding pattern. And it's not necessary. And they also have their own wound if they're doing that and enacting that. And if we can see their child self or their younger self, if they're teenagers, and we can understand that their 4-year old self who experienced divorce or something is the one that is expressing this to us, we can actually have compassion, and we can see that it's a pain that they're carrying around and a holding pattern just like ours.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And what a place of healing. Like can heal through somatic work and frameworks like this, our own work, but it gives so much spaciousness and maybe even the word creativity to understand what's happening. That this is their 4-year old or their 6-year old or their 10-year old that's still stuck in this place because they've had to survive, and there's compassion and love and all these different things available in that. So like this technique of you call it reparenting, right? Like reparenting ourselves as we start to breathe, as we start to get into our body, as we start to feel stuff, it starts to change our relationship with ourselves so we can have different relationships with other people. And I just want to say this to everyone out there. This is an opportunity to change the course of your life and your kids' lives by doing this work on yourself so you're able to show up in a different capacity with them. And can you talk about a little bit about your word that you use, reparenting, and what that means to you?
Yes, yeah. So the beauty of the integrative body psychotherapy is, my mentors, Jack Rosenberg, who's no longer with us, and Beverly Catane Morse, they developed a whole series of practices. And for a long time, there were great people, mostly in the recovery community. And I always believe we're all recovering from something, and oftentimes it's something from our childhood. But people like John Bradshaw, and others, who really worked with inner child work, but they didn't always have a specific set of messages that they were working with to rewire. And so, what Jack did, is he in the 70s came up with a whole series of messages that we developmentally needed throughout our childhood. And there's some for the younger, for the infant self, there's some for the young child, and there's some for the teenager. And these messages, are so profound, and they're called good parent messages, integrative body psychotherapy, good parent messages. Um, and we're able to go back and rewire with these messages anything that we didn't get growing up. And most of us, if we don't get these messages, especially the early ones, 0 to 7, and that sense of attunement, we spend our whole life looking out there for the right relationship, or from these messages from people that we don't necessarily really need them from our boss, or even from our kids, looking for them to fill our void in some way. But nobody else outside of ourselves, not even the right love relationship, can ever really fill and fix what we didn't get back then. So these messages are profound in the sense that we can actually start to heal and fix that wounding inside of ourself, instead of spending our whole life looking out there. And so these messages are amazing, in that sense that we walk around with this wounding, um, and we keep looking out there. But once we give ourselves these messages, start to work with them for a bit, we start to feel as if we actually got all these messages in our childhood, and we start to show up differently in our life and in our relationships and with our children, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and the messages are profound. And when I started working with the messages, it was like it was really, really sweet. And I started to get, like you're saying, some reprogramming, some ideas. And I love this part about IBP and somatic work is that it's an empowerment model. Like, yes, I go to therapy. Yes, I work with a therapist, but I get tools that I get to work with on a daily basis by myself if I so choose, and I get to improve my life every day, not just for the 50 minutes or the hour, once a week, once a month, what it is. And it's really, really, really cool. And can you share like just like three or four of the of your maybe of the good parent messages?
Yeah, so the good parent messages, and some of the early ones that I think are so important to work with, um, some that you may already sort of know, but these are actually written out, and we'll share them with you as well. Um, but the main early ones are, I love you. That's a very important one. You can even, as I say these, repeat them to yourself, or even think of a picture of your child self and imagine giving them and saying them to this picture, and you can add your name in there. So I love you, I want you. And many of us never really felt wanted. We may have come into this world and we were that fourth child that was a mistake, or some other type of situation where we were unplanned, and we've always felt like maybe we weren't wanted. I want you. The next one is, I see you, I hear you. Many of us were taught to be seen but not heard. These were messages that our parents may have actually given us, but I see you and I hear you, to be seen and heard. So I see you and I hear you. My love will make you well. My love will make you well. There's a small window in our early, early infancy where mom and her love can just make us well. And just by that love, it just fills everything up inside. So my love will make you well. And then one more that's very important. I welcome and I cherish you. I welcome and I cherish you and your love. I welcome and I cherish you and your love. And that's such an important one because a lot of us were taught to shut our love down at an early age because our parents weren't available. So I cherish you and I cherish your love, meaning that we can come out with our love. We can actually share our love and not just shut it down or hold it in our body somewhere. So those are some of the earliest ones.
No, those are all beautiful. I'm just going to share a couple of my favorite. One of my favorite is it's not what you do, but who you are that I love. It's not what you do, but who you are that I love. It's just like, yeah, I always felt like I had to do something to get love, and I thought that was really powerful. And the other one was, I will be here with you. I will even be here with you when you die. I think that's how it went. Yeah, just like, yeah, I'm going to be here with myself always. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always looking for someone to be with me, make me better, tell me something. I'm looking for money. I'm looking for all these things outside of myself, even my kids' love. But I'm going to be here with me. I'm here. If I can stay present with my breath, attuned, I'm here. I'm able to love myself, and from that place of attunement and embodiment, then I can actually love other people. And again, it's transformational, and it's an empowerment program. So I just want to talk a little bit about inner child, because you mentioned this a couple times, and we mentioned in vitro, and in vitro is like when you're in your mom's belly before you're born, and pre-verbal, and then the inner child is this part of ourselves that's always with us, but really, really young. And a lot of times we need to go back to this inner child to heal. And this is a really important difference between talk therapy and somatic therapy. For me, is talk therapy, I'm just talking, but in somatic therapy, we're bypassing that talk and we're going to the wound, to the inner child, to work with that stuff. And the breath gets us there. And in IBP, there's body movement too. So this is a yeah, if we can talk a little bit about why we move our body in this particular form of somatic therapy with the breath, and how that gets us to our inner child wound, and how we bypass like all this talking about the same innocuous, not innocuous, but the same ruminating story in different versions over and over again.
Well, the great thing about integrative body psychotherapy is that it's sort of a best of somatic therapy. And that's the greatest part about it, because there's some other somatic therapies that are great as well, but they contain a certain part of the work. And so what IBP contains, which is so amazing and wonderful, and have a lot of gratitude to have experienced it myself and also be a teacher of it, is that it contains the part in which we start to feel in our body and notice where that wounding and holding is in our body. And then it also works with breath work, as you mentioned, and movement, and sort of, and then it also works with thought and working with cognitive therapy while our body is open, while we're having movement. And we combine all of these together, where other somatic therapies and therapies maybe just have part of it. We experience emotion in the body by opening and awakening the body with that breath that I was teaching at the beginning, or earlier on in this podcast. And so we awaken that body, um, and we start to feel places where we've been holding, where we've gone numb. And the majority of people in this world are all numbing on something. I always say that everybody's addicted to something, whether that's TV or work or whatever else. All of us have some form of numbing where we've learned not to feel. And our healing comes from feeling again. So we amplify that feeling in the body through breath. And then we want to move in a way that animals move, and that um, infants move naturally when our body was open before it was shut down. And so a lot of where we hold early emotion and trauma, and what we do in IBP is we work with the root of our body, which is where we have safety and security and early attachment, which is actually our pelvis. So we work on opening up our pelvis to get a sense of grounding, safety, and security. And we have a few ways to do that. But one of the main ways is when we breathe, we actually rotate the pelvis, kind of like what you do in Pilates or a bar class, which a lot of other somatic therapies don't know or don't incorporate, which is so magical, because when you do that, it sets up a release pattern that sort of animals do naturally in nature. Animals move, stretch, and yawn when they feel stressed. They don't store things in their body for 40 years of their life like human beings can store things until it turns into disease or some other type of imbalance. So we use breath, movement, and also thought, like these good parent messages, and we combine them all. Um, but that mainly that breath and that movement awakens the body, helps you find a sense of that presence and that attunement in your body. And I feel alive when I'm saying this, because my body has all this sort of muscle cellular memory of feeling and experiencing that, as you do as well, Lawrence. And from that place, we awaken the body, we find that sense of presence. And when we have that presence, we then release places and sadness from different parts of our body, that further opens our body and heals our body as well, and allows us to be present for ourselves and others in our daily life.
And this inner child, right? Like as we're releasing our body, we're moving our body, and let's just say I'm dealing with some situation at work, which I just get stuck in the story about work over and over again, or about my kids over and over again. By breathing, by moving our body, by getting into the actual block, we access this much younger part of ourselves where the injury actually happened. And that's where the healing happens. It's not at this 40, 30, 50, 80-year-old level. It actually happens at the younger age that we're able to access the actual wound in that place, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so we actually, in the very early, I would say most of our injuries got set into play 0 to 7 in utero and in those very early years of our life. Most people never create a new story in their life. Everything that shows up in our life right now, Freud called it repetition compulsion. He didn't know about the body as much, but repetition compulsion means we keep recreating the same story over and over again, hoping to get it right, hoping to fix what we couldn't fix in our childhood. And that part of us that is subconscious, which is our body, and it's where our child self is stored in that early wounding, will keep sort of driving the bus towards people who remind us of our childhood, because it's familiar. It's what we got wired to as love is. This is love. and we gravitate towards them trying to fix and get that love, oftentimes in places where with our boss or at work or other places where we're not going to get that love from, and we end up then experiencing that same pain. So the pain that we're experiencing now, whether it's our health, our relationships, our career, in our adult life, isn't necessarily about the pain now. We need to be able to go to the root. So when we breathe and we get in our body, and a lot of this IVP work and somatic work is about doing breathwork sessions, finding that place in our body where we're holding and identify the feeling and belief that we carried as a child when that wounding happened, accessing those memories, and then going right to that moment with love and compassion, presence and attunement, and rewiring, releasing and rewiring in real time with our child self. And it is a life transforming experience that I know you've experienced as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it also, I think Jack, who's the founder, called it an efficiency model. Like I went to talk therapy for years, 13, 14 years, and I got somewhere. But then I started doing somatic therapy and it was like supercharged. Like I got as much work done in the first year or so than I did in the previous 10 or 12 years because I was getting past repeating myself over and over again, and we're actually exploring territory that I really didn't know existed because I was cut off. And then once I started opening up, it's like, oh, that happened, this happened. Now I understand. And it really gave me perspective on every other relationship in my life because I could understand what was happening with my mother or my father or my daughter or my ex. It didn't make life wonderful, but it made life fuller and richer. And yeah, I felt so much more presence. I just think the presence with life in general is just life changing.
Yeah, if we're just doing the talk therapy, we're just stuck in our story and we're actually replaying our story over and over again. There's some initial relief in that, but that's a 10 to 12-year model oftentimes to see real lasting changes. But within IBP, within the first, I would say the first 90 days, you're going to experience um, starting to really connect to your core and your essence and feel a difference there. And then within the first year, I would say it may be equivalent to about 10 years of talk therapy as you experienced. And most of us are so numb in our life because of the pain or losing people or losing our family as well, whatever else we've experienced in our life, that we've gone dead inside, and our body's in such a chronic holding pattern, and later on that can turn into disease, but it also pushes people away and pushes experiences away. So when you get in your body, and we actually teach a whole practice called sustaining constancy that you can do on your own daily for 10 minutes to be in your body on a daily basis. And that's why Jack called it an efficiency model, because he had all these tools that he implemented that a lot of somatic therapies or therapies never had. And with that, you start to be in your essence and what we call our core self in our daily life, feeling that presence that we're talking about. And radical shifts start to happen in our life, mainly because we're happier and we're taking in the moment because we're finally present.
Yeah. And again, with the efficiency model and the good parent messages and the breath work and having sequences of daily practices you can have. Again, I want to reiterate this over and over again. Like it is an empowerment model. Yes, you're going to see a therapist. They're going to help you. They're going to give you some foundational stuff, and you have something that you can work with on a daily basis. And like the breath, like if I'm not feeling in my body, I can pull over, I can sit somewhere, I can go through one of the breath exercises, I can get back into my body. If I'm going to meet my kids or my one daughter that I see, a lot of time I will take some time before I meet her to get into my body, to take a bunch of breaths, to feel the energy in my body, to feel my feet on the ground, to be at home with me. Because I know when I'm not, I create a lot of harm because I'm lashing out at people. I'm trying to get people to fix me. I'm trying to fix people. And by being really inside my body, it helps me sustain my relationship. And I will say for anyone that is estranged or alienated or disconnected in any way, like my relationships that I do have are there because I'm doing this as one of my practices. It lets my relationships change. And we don't have a lot of time here, but I just want to share, like, every relationship in my life has changed because of my practice and understanding what's happening in my inner ecosystem. My parents' relationships have transformed because I can understand what they're going through and what's happening for them, even if they're not physically communicating it, based on this work that we're doing. And there's so much stuff that I want to get into, but we don't have a lot of time left. So I'm just going to talk about a couple things here. I just want to talk about agency, because
Yeah.
this isn't a, yeah, it's like really important. Like agency, this is an empowerment model. So we have self agency, which I'll let you describe, and I also want you to just let folks know what a high agent is, because these are words and terminologies that no one's heard, but really really important to transform in our relationships.
Oh, wow. Yeah, love it. So in IBP, we talk about a term called agency. And for many years in the recovery community and just layman's sort of self help pop psychology, people talk about codependency and codependency no more. And I always love the term agency because this is the original psychological term. And it also contains the antidote in it. Codependency doesn't necessarily contain an antidote other than just being aware that we're codependent and we can just walk around with that label forever. But what do we actually do about it? And so when we came into this world, the term agency is usually thought of as who are we representing in our life? Children who are seen, heard, understood, and get that attunement and sense of presence, they develop something called self agency, where they know if they want something, they can ask for it. And later on in life, that translates into really knowing their inner voice, being able to move towards their dreams, pursue relationships that they want, pursue a career that they want, and really trust in their inner voice and that they can actually go out and and kind of create their life and have authorship over their life. So self agency is the psychological term that a lot of us may be aware of, that infants who are in their core self, in their essence, and all of us who are in our essence and understand that or want to return to our essence, we need to have self agency. But what many of us learn, and in IVP we talk about self abandonment. And so many of us, what Lawrence was talking about, who might be high agents, are what people may have called codependents in the past, where we learned in our childhood to adapt ourselves and change ourselves to be loved, either to please, perform, excel in life, treat ourselves as an object, or actually literally caretake or fix a parent, where we should have been allowed to have our own voice and pursue and be supported in what we wanted for ourselves. We had to reverse that and adapt and change ourselves to live our life in agency, or we could substitute codependency, to everyone else outside of ourselves. And we continue to recreate that in our adult life. And we'll do anything. Please don't leave us. Please love me. Never leave me. Please like me. It's like, please pick me. We're doing everything to be liked or to fix or perform. Um, and that energy really blocks authentic connection in our life. It blocks our connection from ourselves, but then other people who we try to fix or control, or please, we get stuck in this role forever. We feel resentful towards them. They will eventually rebel and feel resentful towards us, and our kids will rebel against us as well if we don't empower them. So a lot of us have walked around with this high sense, instead of agency to ourself, supporting, taking care of, knowing who we are. We flip that in our childhood, and our child self is driving the bus and continuing to live as a high agent, as if our survival depended upon pleasing, fixing, performing for other people to be loved. And it's debilitating, destabilizing. It leads to health problems in our body. It leads to lost relationships as well, because it pushes other people away. It doesn't get us what we want in our adult life. It may have helped us survive as a child, but it doesn't work now.
Thank you for that, Noah. And this is such a huge thing, and we just don't have time to get into it. But for me personally, like, I was a high agent. I was trying to take care of my mother in vitro. I was taking care of her. She needed my energy to survive, is what it felt like. Or, that's how I describe it. So then when I came into the life and I picked my partner and I created my family, I looked for someone that needed me to take care of them in a certain way or provide emotional support, emotional energy, and that's how I created my family. So this is important
Yeah.
stuff, and somatic work is a wonderful door to this stuff. And I have to put a cork in that, but that feels like it's a whole show by itself. But I really want
Yeah.
to get into Noah a little bit and how you can get hold of him. And you'd mentioned that you do group programs and you have other stuff available. How do people find you? How do they connect with you? Like, well, what are you doing that people can get into? And all this information is going to be in the show notes, folks. So you're going to have the good parent messages and anything that Noah is about to share right now. I'll make sure everything's down there so you can continue to explore this idea of IBP and somatic therapy.
Well, thank you, Lawrence, for having me here, and such an honor to be present with you and experience this attunement. Thank you so much. And so, the best ways to get connected and get in this work, first off, my website, noahrothschild.com. It's with an SCHILD, noahrothschild.com. I'm also inner child healer on Instagram, and then on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook and add me, and I have a group on Facebook, a free group called Inner Child Empowerment with Noah Rothschild. And so there's some ways to get involved, um, and I look forward to connecting with anybody who wants to reach out.
Thank you for that, Noah. And I'm just going to finish off with this last question. Like IBP, phenomenal, somatic, phenomenal. Getting hold of you is great. And we have listeners from all over the world. And I just want to, not everyone's going to have the same access. And if people are looking for a somatic therapy therapist or they're looking for some kind of somatic empowerment program that they can work, like what would you just say these are the three things that you want to look for if you're in a different place and you don't have access to necessarily IBP or IBP trainers? What were the three most important things that we should look for if we want to delve into doing some somatic work ourselves?
Well, somatic work you can do from wherever you are, with especially with definitely somebody who works remotely, who understands integrative body psychotherapy, somatic psychotherapy. They should be able to help you remotely. So that's sort of number one there. I think that the second thing to look for is there's a lot of therapists and coaches who have really done this work, and I would ask them, what is your personal experience with this work? Like, are they embodying this work? Have they actually had a transformation with this work? Is this something that's moved, touched, and inspired them? So I would look for that, and ask them about that and see if you resonate with them and their story. And if they don't want to share their story with you at all, I'd say that's a no go, for me, because I think we want to have that connection in this work and attunement, and we want the person to be a real person on the other end of the work that we're doing as well. So a lot of the work is practicing that being in our body and being in our core and being witnessed in that space. Such an important part of this work. And I think the third thing is, what tools and practices can they teach you once in between therapy sessions and then once the somatic therapy is done? I think those are the top three things to sort of ask.
Wow, that's wonderful and incredibly useful. And Noah, thanks for taking the time to come out and play for a little bit. It was wonderful to see you smile and have our moments and share this wonderful and important information with people. And yeah, thank you. Really, really, really appreciate and honor you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Such an honor to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon. All right. Bye for now.
Oh man. Wow. I got a man and a wow and a deep breath. That was good. There's a lot of information, a lot of stuff to digest, a lot of opportunity on. It's going to be a bunch of great stuff in the show notes. Noah's website will be in there. The good parent messages will be in there. Maybe we can put some breathwork stuff in. I'll double check with Noah if he's open for that and different ways to get hold of him. He lets you know about his free Facebook group. I highly recommend you join and check it out and see the different challenges and stuff he has to offer there. And yeah, yeah. Good stuff, rich stuff, a lot going on. I hope you enjoyed the show. Reach out to us. Let us know if there's any topics you want us to cover. If you know any great guests, we're always looking for people to add to the panels, and we're always looking to talk about recovery. Right? This is so painful and gut wrenching, and yeah, there's some really important stories to tell, but we really want to focus on like what's the step forward? How do we keep moving forward? How do we keep transforming this incredibly challenging area? And fun stuff, great shows coming up. I'm really excited to talk to some of the guests that are coming up. That's going to be really fun. We have some great panels. We have panels of step parents coming up, which will be great to just give you a different perspective on a different population that are struggling and what their struggles on. We have more panels coming up with kids that have been previously alienated, that are young adults and adults. We just have good stuff, you know. And check out the show notes. Make sure to like, share, tell people about this. You know, maybe yell out the window now, let people know, hey, Family Disappear podcast, listen. Man, I might have been silly, but whatever. This is where I'm at today. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Thanks for spending a couple minutes. In case no one's told you yet today, I love you. I hope you have a beautiful day. And yeah, that's what I got.